on, Shadow Corner fam? It's your friendly neighborhood life coach, Cyan Gates. Now, it is officially past the 4th. I didn't get a chance to tell people may the 4th be with you, but hey, I'm still going to have fun with it. But it is Cinco de Mayo. In the words of my god kids, Cinco de Mayo. So we're going to turn this out. Very interesting episode today. So I have, if everybody remembers correctly, my brain farted. Sorry, y'all. So if everybody remembers correctly, you remember I was featured in a book called Perspectives on Cancer, Stories of Healing, Hope, and Resilience, where I talked about my aunt, about her cancer journey and how that affected me, how it affected my mom, how it affected everybody else around me. But the one thing that I did not disclose in my journey was about the grieving process. Now, during the grieving process, it was not easy. I literally forced myself to go to work, even though at the time I needed a moment, because I was always taught no matter what, you still got to go to work. You still got to make the money. You still got to make the coin. So in this episode, I want to touch on grief and healing beyond it. And what wonderful person we have today that is not only a profound person of great healing, but she's experienced grief on her own. So to give you a synopsis of our guest, in this episode, we'll be meeting Miss Ann Hince, a former software engineer turned emotional healing advocate. Love that. Let's see. After the sudden loss of her mother at 19, Ann carried unprocessed grief for decades. And it wasn't until her late 30s that she had that pivotal moment that led her to confront and release the deep-seated emotions. And also shares how she discovered emotional freedom techniques, or EFT, a method that involves tapping significant Mandarin points to release stored trauma. And through consistent practice, she not only achieved emotional clarity, but also experienced physical transformation, including growing on a physical level 3.5 inches at the age of 50 by releasing long-held tension. Her journey underscored the profound connection between emotional and physical being. Ann's story is a testament of power and self-awareness and the body's intimate ability to heal. Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Ann Hince, how you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. I just need to clear up one thing. It's 3/4 of an inch, not 3.5 inches. That would be really nice, but I'm not there yet.
Sorry about that. All right. Okay, so tell me who was Ann before the healing? Like, who was she? I know you said software engineer, but beyond the occupation, who was Ann Hince before she became the lovely coach we see today?
Right. Inside, I was afraid all the time. I had complex PTSD, is what I guess people would call it these days, from my dad, who was very short-tempered and an alcoholic and loved to control us. So I was just always, looking around, trying to make myself and my family safe. And I was always, drudging what was about to happen. I was working through it in my mind, so my mind was very busy. It was always working through things to make sure I would be safe. So I was very jumpy, very reactionary, and life at home was not very peaceful because I was not very peaceful. So that's really who I was back then.
Okay. And can you share about that pivotal moment when you felt as if that you needed a change or that you needed to transition from that scared 19-year-old on the inside to the adult now thriving and conquering the world of emotional intelligence.
Yes, it was definitely one pivotal moment. And it was at my boys' school, and it was two other mothers at the school. And these women were self confident, self assured, authority type women in my mind. That was not me. I was the scared mother inside. And they told me I'd done something wrong. And my mind just went, it just went haywire. And for 3 days, I couldn't stop it spinning. Like that monkey mind just kept going round. Everything I'd said, what I did, what I could have done differently, what they said, what they could have done differently. It just could not stop it spinning for 3 days. It was ridiculous. And it was at the end of that I realized, okay, this is not normal. No one else I knew would be so intense in that reaction. So I realized that wasn't normal. I also realized it felt a little bit like how I'd react when my dad would tell me I'd done something wrong. So for me, that was the little opening that maybe my childhood was still affecting me. And maybe, therefore, there was something I could do about it. So that was the turning point for me.
Okay, so run me through that. What was one of the steps that you had to take in order to get past that?
Right. Well, I didn't really know. I didn't really know what to do at the time. But it was in that time frame that I went to a doctor's appointment, and he was a holistic physician. So he had more tools in his toolbox than most doctors do. And I can't remember why I went to him, but it was nothing to do with my mental health. It was something totally different. But he recognized I was more stressed than I should be, given that I was a stay-at-home mother with two healthy young boys. So he asked me on a scale of 0 through 10 what my stress level was. And I said 8. And then he asked me why. And it was that question that made me realize, oh, it was finding my mother on the bathroom floor when I was 19, because the tears from that event were still just under the surface 2 decades later. So he happened to know this technique that's called EFT, which is short for emotional freedom technique. It's a little weird. It's about tapping on meridian points on the body as you're talking something through. So he tapped with me about my mother's death for the first time. And I allowed some of the tears to flow. I said some of the words, some of the phrases that had been kind of living inside of me that I hadn't said out loud for 2 decades. And it just allowed some of that energy to release. And so on my way home, I realized that those emotions and those memories are stored physically in our body, kind of emotionally and energetically, but also physically, and we can let them go. It was the first time I understood that. So I started learning about EFT because it was being given away for free by Gary Craig, who developed it. And I learned everything I could. And then I started using it. I actually wanted to try it out first. I needed to try it out because I have that engineering mindset. I don't want to waste time on it if it wasn't going to be something that, did anything. So I tried it out first, and then I started using it every day. And I noticed changes almost straight away.
Okay, so I know you talked about tapping meridian channels, and from what I remember from since I'm in the process of getting my degree in alternative medicine, for those that don't know, meridian, it is a TSM, or traditional Chinese TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, where we talk about meridian channels. These channels are not only connected to parts of our on across all our body, but they're also connected to different organs. Each organ is attached to an emotion and is also attached to a certain point in our lives. But what some people don't know, it is also attached to certain traumas and tensions. So if you've ever had a pressure point massage, at some point, some therapists do it, where it allows the body to relive certain emotions by pressing on a certain point. And then they also allows them to release or give the person a shock of memory back from that pivotal moment. Now, can you like break us down? I know it's not just tapping. So how do you know where to go, and how do you know like that you're doing the right thing? Otherwise it'll look like you're just tapping like you don't know what you're doing and all
Right.
over it goes.
Yeah. So that was great. I'm glad you could share your knowledge there. That was really good. Yeah. So we're always tapping on the same places. It's the same specific places, the same points each time. And there's a series of 9 points. Some people add a few more, some people a few less, but it's always the same points. And the points that are used in EFT kind of cover the body, right? So we don't have to work on just one specific area. We're actually covering the nervous system of the whole body when we tap through a series of points. And what we do is we talk through what it was, or we feel the emotion, whatever it is. We want to bring that back into our nervous system. So bring the event back. So with my mother, I talked to this doctor about my mother's death. Woke up that morning and it was quiet, and she normally had the radio going. So all those kind of things, I just talk through them as I was tapping on these points. And the tapping creates an interrupt into the nervous system. So normally, I was telling that story, right, my nervous system would react in the way that it always had when I talked about my mother's death. But the tapping allows some of the energy to release, some of the emotion to release. So if you keep doing it, then that energy and that emotion releases. So I didn't tap on my mother's death just that one time with the doctor. I did it multiple times afterwards, and each time some more of the energy would release until it got to the place where I could tell the story and I don't have any emotion left anymore. It's all gone. So the wound, the grief has been healed. And what's really interesting, or what was really interesting for me at the time, is the memories stop coming to mind. Once the energy underneath them has gone, they don't come up anymore, which is actually really fun. It was really fun when I worked on my dad's stuff, right? On the anger and the trauma that he created, and the thoughts that I had taken on in my mind that used to be his. Once I'd worked through all that history with him, the thoughts never came to mind anymore.
Okay, so this is like a off the mental question, because I know that for some like children that feel emotional distress, did at one point with all those events that happened, did you ever think it was like your fault that all this was happening, that all this came about? Like you didn't do any self-blaming, right?
Well, I did. Yeah, I did plenty of self-blaming, which is okay, because if that's my thought, then I want to acknowledge it and accept it and then allow the energy of it to release. And once it has, then you start to realize the truth. Oh, really, it wasn't my fault. It was my dad or whatever. But while we're feeling that it is our fault, and we feel responsible and we feel guilt, those are all feelings and thoughts that we want to acknowledge and release so that we can find the truth that's underneath them.
Okay, so what insights do you have gained about connecting between emotional suppression and physical tension? Like I said, we are talking about meridian channels and everything else, but I know that you said that our nervous system is connected with that, but does that also hook into like physical tension as well? I know emotion is attached to it, but it's I'm trying to get my brain.
Yeah, I got it.
Does physical tension have to play a part in the healing process, like learning to release it?
It does play a part in the process, even though we might not be aware of it. So notice with the EFT, right, there's a physical component to it. I'm actually tapping on my physical body, and it's allowing the energy that's stored in the body, the physical body, to release. So it's absolutely connected, even though when we start the process, we might not be aware of that. I certainly wasn't aware of it, right? I was just talking through memories and releasing emotions. I didn't realize it was really working on the physical tension as well. That took, in my journey, it took going deeper. And what I realized EFT was doing, it was opening up my subconscious mind, which is in the body. And as it does that, our self-awareness deepens. So I became aware of my emotions, like on a day-to-day basis, like, any time during the day, I could check in with myself and I could tell you what emotion I was feeling. I hadn't been able to do that before. It was new because I'd suppressed all of that knowledge, all of that awareness underneath the big emotions, right, from my childhood. It took releasing those to become aware at that deeper level. And then I became aware at the level of the physical sensations underneath the emotions, which is more the physical aspect, right? When we're actually feeling something like frustration, we're actually feeling tension in our body somewhere, and we call that frustration. But most of us aren't aware of that tension anymore. We've kind of let that sink into our subconscious mind. So
Like
we can
manual
reverse
override?
that. Say that again?
Like manual override?
Yes.
Ah,
Or
okay.
subconscious
Gotcha.
override. More like going into automatic when we used to be in you know, a
Fight or
whatever it's
flight?
called. Yeah, we just push it down. So if you think about it, when we're taught a word like frustration, right, as a child, it's not an easy word to understand. So we might feel frustrated and someone will say to us, "Oh, you're frustrated." Or we might see someone else and someone will say they're frustrated. So we kind of connect that word with how we're feeling or how we see someone feeling. So it's really connected at that point, the word with the physical feeling of it. And over time, we suppress the physical feeling of it and we just use the word. So this is kind of reversing that process, and you're becoming aware again of those physical sensations.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a little bit. For those that are new to emotional healing, what are steps that you would recommend to begin the release of that the stored emotions? Like, I know that the obvious for some coaches, like, go ahead and journal, meditate, get out in nature, frolic amongst the clouds, hug a tree, that type of stuff of grounding. But like, what are your steps that would help in this situation?
Okay, the first step that I did and I recommend for other people is to just ask yourself multiple times a day, how am I feeling right now? And answer yourself. Because to answer yourself, to put it in words, you have to go inside, feel or sense how you're feeling, and then create that into words, put that into words. And it's the moment of sensing how you're feeling that allows some of the energy to release. So I would set a timer, during the day multiple times. And when it goes off, ask yourself, how are you feeling? And give yourself an answer. And that starts the process of becoming aware at a deeper level of self-awareness.
Okay. So, what are some common mistakes or like common obstacles that somebody may run into while starting this process? Is it consistency? Is it just thinking about the emotion of grief? Is it anything? What does that look like?
Well, for me, back in like 20 years ago, it was consistency.
Oh,
These days, we have phones and we can set a timer, and it's much easier. So that's what I would do. I would do that. But, the biggest thing is we're so programmed not to feel our emotions. We will do anything in our power to avoid going inside and checking how we're feeling. So, even when the alarm goes off, we might think, oh, well, I won't do it right now. I'll do it later, right? Or we'll get up and have a drink, or we'll go and exercise. We'll do something, but we won't stop and feel how we feel. So it takes a lot of effort to reprogram ourselves, but we have to get that gap in there. We have to be able to say, okay, look at me. I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling tired, or whatever. Rather than be sad and be tired, we have to notice that we are that. Unless you can do that, you can't get any further. So that to me is always the first step. And then, of course, I recommend someone learns EFT because it's so easy, it's free, it's practical, you can do it anywhere, and it's really powerful. So I recommend people learn that, because then once you know what you're feeling, if I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling frustrated, I can tap and say, I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling frustrated, and allow some of that sadness or frustration to leave, to come back to peace. And then you can go on with your day and notice the next time. And it kind of builds from there. Those are the first steps.
Okay. So looking back on like the journey, are there any stories that can come to mind with clients that where it not only challenged you, but it also challenged the client as well?
Well, it's really fun. I find it really fun to see how people are having issues now and to relate that back to the past. So I've been working with one lady for a while now who's having breathing issues right now. And it's all due to having nightmares about a heater in her room when she was a child because she would stop breathing. It was such an intense nightmare. She had it every night for years and years. She held herself tight. So she stored that tension in her connective tissue. And that is so tight in there now that it's preventing her breathing freely right now. So, we go back and we work on that nightmare over and over to open up that subconscious mind, to open up that wound and allow her to release her inner child to release all that tension so that she can now breathe freely. So it's just really interesting to see the connections between what we're going through now and our past and our childhood.
And it's amazing that you that is very that is interesting because I never thought of it that way. Where it's like you had to live constantly. How does that feel? Oh, I don't feel bad, but I was like, oh, I don't think anybody deserves that. Um,
No, but at the time you don't realize what it's doing, right? As
right.
children, we don't really have a choice as to what we go through as children, but we live with it for years and years and years afterwards unless we do this kind of work, the shadow work, right? To open up those shadows or those wounds inside of us and release it, which is essentially releasing our soul to be free to live in this body.
Okay. So can you? I know we talked about you. We talked about your work and everything else. I know you have a book. It says "A Path to Insight." Can you share a bit about that and how that assists others in healing?
Sure. That book, A Pathway to Insight, it goes through the steps that I went through. So I've mentioned the first couple of steps. And the third step was actually feeling those sensations in my body and putting my awareness inside of my body. I became able to do that, which is something I've never heard of before. So now I can focus on tension directly in the body. That's how I know that these emotions and those memories are stored in our body. I can feel them inside. So that's how I focus on and release tension in my tissues and bones. And I've shifted my skull bones. That's how I grew. I've released that tension inside. So that is insight. I believe it's the original meaning of the word insight, as in inside sight or inward sight. And that was kind of the third step. And I shared that whole journey in my book, A Pathway to Insight, so people know the things that happened along the way, because the body does some kind of strange things when it's releasing so much tension for so long. Yeah. And I also have a workbook that goes with it, right? So that will help bring up the shadow so that you know what to work with.
Okay, so where can people find you to work with you? Where can people to like listen to your podcast? I know you're on YouTube as well, so you're a very busy lady. So where can people find you, listen to you, get information, and work with you?
Okay, well, my website is my name, annhince.com, and there's quite a bit of information on there. As you said, there's a lot of information on YouTube, and I'm very active on Facebook. So I share a lot of this information. I want people to know that this is possible, that we can do this, that there's deep healing, that we can find ourselves. But if someone wants to work with me one-on-one, I do that as well. And you can contact me through my website.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody before they leave us. If you could give yourself advice, no matter what age, no matter what time period, or no matter where you went, what would the advice be?
I would tell myself that emotions are just energy that's stored in the body, that's stuck in the body. All we have to do is find them and acknowledge them and feel them and release them, and then they're gone. They don't have to stay in our body for decades.
That is beautiful. I love it. Well, thank you, Miss Ann, for allowing us and gracing us with your beautiful presence and giving us all these pearls and these gems and nuggets that we will use from this point on.
Good. Thank you.
No problem. See you next time. All right, Shadow Corner fam. As much as we would love to talk on and on about grief and talk about the emotional release that is needed, the bottom line is from your friendly neighborhood life coach is that these emotions, emotions are not just acts that your body takes on. These are actual energy stored compartments. You may not think about it, but the way you talk to people, the way that your jaw shifts, or even the way that you walk could be a result of energy stored in the wrong place or needed to be released. And like I always tell you, you are responsible for your own healing. You are responsible for your own acknowledgement. You have to be the advocate for you when it comes down to your emotional health. It is not anybody else's responsibility. But once you take that gauntlet, you will be more stronger than you realize. And as always, it has been fun, but I'm going out inside the sun. So just like that, we're out. Bye, fam.